A warm welcome to you all. I welcome you to this webinar on know-how for European chemicals focal points and the training opportunities that we will offer. We, that is the MSP Institute and the Gender and Chemicals Partnership. My name is Mino Hemati and I'm an associate with the MSP Institute, and I'm happy to be facilitating this session for you. The MSP Institute is a small charitable association based in Berlin, in Germany. Our work is dedicated to high-quality stakeholder engagement, communication, and cooperation for sustainable development. We've been working on gender and chemicals since 2017, mostly in the SAICM, now GFC process. We're serving as the Secretariat of the Gender and Chemicals Partnership as well, a multi-stakeholder partnership created in 2023 and launched at ICCM5, dedicated to advancing knowledge and capacities on gender and chemicals, in order to contribute to gender equality, the participation of women and girls, and good chemicals and waste management. Again, if you feel like it, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name, your organization, maybe where you are based. We were asked to record this info webinar as well, to share the recording with those of participants or interested participants who couldn't join today, and I hope that's okay with everyone. We have two main objectives for this session. Firstly, we will introduce our new project that includes upcoming training opportunities for European focal points for the Global Framework on Chemicals and European focal points for the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemical Waste and Pollution, ISP-CWP. And secondly, we would like to discuss the planned trainings a bit with you, seeking your feedback and input. So our agenda is as follows. We're happy to have 3 brief welcoming remarks from the GFC, the ISP, and the G&CP. Nice acronyms. We will then present the know-how project, the needs assessment, and the planned training and its modules. We have a bit of time for questions of clarification. And then we want to brainstorm with you a bit using a virtual mural board. We'll share information on how to register for the trainings and close in an hour by 5 p.m. Focal points' roles and responsibilities are in some parts quite undefined. We know that focal points are often very busy and do not necessarily have the time to do all that may be required, but they also need support and capacity development to fulfill their roles. It seems that stakeholder engagement, stakeholder processes, multi-stakeholder dialogues and partnerships are often not well known to focal points or difficult to initiate and implement. And the same applies to gender issues. Focal points seem to need knowledge, data, information, access to research, and learn more about how to work with women's groups, gender experts, and gender scientists, who are often stakeholders not well known to them. How to find them, how to talk to them, how to motivate them to engage in the Global Framework on Chemicals and the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel. But that's enough of introduction from my side. Let me welcome our speakers who will give brief welcoming remarks. We have Kay Williams, Tessa Hoverser, and Mariela Noto with us, and I'll introduce them properly just before they speak. Let's begin with Kay Williams, head of the GFC Secretariat at UNEP. Kay joined UNEP in this role in 2024, coming from the UK Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. She has over 20 years of experience in EU and international engagement, including the Basel, Stockholm, Rotterdam Conventions, the Minamata Convention, and of course, the Strategic Approach to International Chemicals Management, where she served as the co-chair of the Beyond 2020 process. Thank you for being here, Kay, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Minu, for that introduction, and I'm delighted to be able to be invited to say a few words at the start of this webinar. As many of you may know, the role of the focal point is absolutely essential for the implementation of the Global Framework on Chemicals, and I have been a huge supporter of giving clearer guidance to that particular role and providing support in the form of training. The framework itself also, through Resolution 5/7, recognised the importance and requested us in the Secretariat to help develop those guidelines to strengthen the role and provide the support and training. The framework is focused in a different way from its predecessor. It's looking at transformation, and not only about in the environment, but also health, labour, construction and agriculture, and the economic and industry sectors, looking at businesses, looking at how along their value chain we can make that transformation. And these are new areas for some people that have been focal points and have been working in this area, and they don't know so much about how to communicate, create networks, how to fulfill the roles of that's required to implement the framework effectively. As Mina was mentioning, the role of the focal point is hugely broad, and having been a focal point myself for many years, and I know it is a role that is put upon a number of people on top of everything else that you have to do in your day job. And that is a challenge. And I think it's a challenge that we have to work together to try and overcome. But it also does mean that if you are a focal point, or even a focal point for several conventions, you know, it is our responsibility to communicate that there is an obligation or a responsibility that does come with the role, and in some way try to release additional resources from within your department or where you're working to allow you to fill that function effectively. I also know that within Europe, there is also slightly different functions that may be expected of focal points compared to other parts of the world. I think it does vary depending on where you're sitting. And I certainly think knowing about economic arguments, as well as putting them in gender responsive formats or narratives, it's really important that we're able to speak the language that politicians will be receptive to hear. And we know that certainly for the European Union, it is about competition, and we need to be able to articulate what we're doing in the words of economics and rehearse those arguments when we are talking to our business departments. So for me, it's really important that focal points understand that businesses, French business Decathlon, for example, is working on digital product passports, which will address the chemicals, and understanding what they're doing, which will aid transparency along the supply chain, will save money as well as also be good for the framework. And having that understanding and being able to communicate that amongst each other and peers and your across your government and to your politicians and ministers is incredibly important. Finally, the vision, I think, for focal points within the framework is to not stay as to go beyond the environment. We're extremely keen to have national focal points that are sitting in different departments, be they in the health, the business, or the labour department. So that's something that's absolutely key. And I think that should be taken borne in mind as you're developing your networks to be able to help you implement the requirements and become more than that post box, which is very much what tends to have happened when you're given the role on top of the day job. So finally, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to know about the programme of work and what the intentions are. So I look forward to this conversation. Thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words, and I'm going to pass back over to you, Minu.
Thank you very much, Kay. Also speaking from experience as a focal point for many years, and underlining the importance of communication, the economic language, and going beyond the environment, which even places more needs on networking, which is also something that takes time and effort. So thank you very much, Kay, for this outlook. We'd like to turn to Tessa Horbesse. Welcome, Tessa. Tessa is the Principal Coordinator of the Interim Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution, just created in June this year. She joined UNEP in 2000 and has worked on strengthening the science policy interface on environmental assessments, emerging issues, and program development and management. Thank you very much for joining us. Tessa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Minu. And also for me, it's a great pleasure to make some opening remarks here as the head of the Interim Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution. The Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution, in short, ISP-CWP, was indeed formally established only a few weeks ago, on the 20th of June at an intergovernmental meeting in Uruguay. And this major milestone followed the completion of the mandate by the ad hoc open-ended working group, the OEWG, to prepare proposals for the Science Policy Panel, which had begun its work in 2022 as requested by the UN Environment Assembly. The overarching goals of the panel is to strengthen the science policy interface, to contribute to the sound management of chemicals and waste, and pollution prevention. And the panel is expected to deliver on 5 principal functions. The first is undertaking horizon scanning. The second, conducting assessments. The third, providing up-to-date information, disseminating findings and raising public awareness. The fourth, facilitating information sharing. And the fifth, integrating capacity building into all these functions and the work of the panel to strengthen the science policy interface. And for many of you, this might be not really news because many of you might actually have been there. But since the panel is really, really new, I think it's important that we really kind of go out visibly and speak to what it is intended to do and what it aspires to. So delivering the policy relevant scientific assessment and advice, in doing so, the panel aims to really assist countries by taking informed decisions and actions, including also through the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements and other international instruments, such as the Global Framework on Chemicals. And in this way, it helps to foster the tackling of pollution at national, regional, and global levels. The panel recognizes the vital role of different stakeholders, and at the heart of the panel's work is the Interdisciplinary Expert Committee. It's well recognized that this scientific and technical advisory body needs to be interdisciplinary and inclusive in its approach. And this inclusiveness will enable the panel to actually capture and share a wide range of knowledge and evidence, enhancing also the relevance and utility of its outputs. It will be critical to engage the best scientific expertise from around the globe in the preparation of deliverables for the panel. And we therefore also encourage all of you to spread the word about this new panel amongst your networks. We're very proud that we have reached this historic milestone to have established the panel, as it fills a long-standing gap between science and policy making. And many, including some of you, have fought long and hard for a broad and robust science policy interface for chemicals, waste, and pollution, to work alongside the other scientific bodies that are already existing for climate change, the IPCC, and biodiversity loss, the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. So this new interface will allow science and solutions to reach policymakers. And this is particularly important for developing countries that previously did not have access to international networks or to the latest science or information. And the new panel has the potential to transform how the challenges posed by chemicals, waste, and pollution are being addressed and foster sustainable development for all. So much work still lays ahead while the panel is at the stage of operationalizing what has been agreed in the so-called foundational document for the panel. And the panel will need to grow its membership, develop partnerships, and build its name. There are still many important aspects to be agreed, including how to develop and implement the work program. But the panel is there, and it's there to stay and evolve. And every step will bring us closer to our shared goal to protect human health and safeguard the environment. And with that, I will now hand back to you, Minu, and I wish the MSP training series every success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tessa, also for introducing this very, very new body, although some of us have been engaged, as you said, but I think it's been very worthwhile to hear that to hear that introduction and the main features, and also you're underlying the work needing to be inclusive and interdisciplinary. Thank you very much for this. Thanks for joining us and sharing your views. I would like to turn to Mariela Noto from ZDHC, Zero Discharge from Hazardous Chemicals, and from the Gender and Chemicals Partnership. As Academia and Multilateral Partnerships Director at ZDHC, Mariela advances ZDHC's upstream innovation, academic and IGO engagement, and nature-based implementation efforts. Since September 2024, she is also a member of the board of the Gender and Chemicals Partnership and co-chair of the G&CP Working Group on Education and Training. And her co-chair, Bipul Saha from India, introduced himself in the chat. He's also here, the co-chair from the working group. Mariela serves as ZDHC's focal point for the UNEP Global Framework on Chemicals. Great to have you here, Mariela. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Minu, and thank you very much for having me. I'm one of those relatively newly focal points in the arena. So I don't know everybody who is, or not most of the people in the call. Hopefully later this year, we will meet more in person. So I'm sitting here as a representative of the board of the Gender and Chemicals Partnership, but also as a focal point and as part of a multi-stakeholder association that's mainly focusing on the elimination of hazardous chemicals. And one of the things that that struck me, especially in the past year again, is that we all know that soil, water, and air contamination by chemicals is currently almost daily in the news. Hazardous pesticides, heavy metals pollution, PFAS, and no sector is exempt. So we are mostly focused as the ZDHC Foundation on textiles, but from textiles to electronics, agriculture, cosmetics, mining, automotive, across the board industries are confronted with the reality of exposing both people and the environment to substances of concern. And as focal points, we fortunately come from a wide range of organizations, although a lot are related to governments. Of course, there are also focal points coming from industry and other organizations, which will be helpful for the understanding of certain elements of the contamination. The issue is not new. As early as in the 60s, women such as Rachel Carson and Joanne Macy warned already for the devastating consequences of hazardous chemicals. Yet, despite all those decades of evidence, the challenges still persist. And that's why we are all here in this position as well. As indicated in the concept note that was shared, every year, more than 9 million people worldwide lose their lives due to pollution. And although we often think of this as as almost a distant problem affecting other countries where a lot of industry is taking place, we know that it's happening here as well, just around the corner in Europe, with recent cases in the past years as well in Belgium, in the Netherlands, related to PFAS or the steel industry. So the risks from direct exposure are significant, as well as those from indirect exposure and long-term consequences that we don't even know about yet. When we look at the impacts, yes, they're universal. They are affecting both men and women, but we also know, and that's of course one of the big roles of the Gender and Chemicals Partnership, that women and girls are disproportionately affected by it, owing to economic, social, physiological factors and others. And we see that not only again in the global South, but as well in Europe and the US. As an organization, ZDHC itself has been working for more than a decade on providing global implementation frameworks on sustainable chemical management, training, as well as the development of tools in the textile, apparel, and footwear industry. We developed a manufacturing restricted substance list and created tools to eliminate those hazardous chemicals and search for alternatives. However, in all these years, and I'm always very open and honest to say this, one critical aspect has always been overlooked, and that was the role of gender. And although we recognize the importance of acknowledging the diversity in the value chain, the industry itself has not been very fast in incorporating this dimension into their work. So that is a very a key component that we see coming back in our own work as well. And as Minu stated in her first words, that is mainly also due to a lack of research, data gathering, the training and the education of not only the people on the ground, but also the companies that are setting out, for instance, in our industry, the production, but also the focal points and other people that are working in this arena. And as in my capacity, also as a co-chair of the training and education work group, together with people, and as a board member of the Gender and Chemicals Partnership, of course, we're very happy with this project around the know-how for European chemicals for focal points. It is a training and education program that will highlight the importance of the gender lens in sustainable chemical management, and it addresses all the pressing needs around this specific topic. And it actually is, I would almost say, I mean, it's currently very much focused on the role of the European focal points, but it also actually acknowledges and looks at the gap that is there within industry as well. So for me, it's also a very good example of what could be educated and transferred to the industry experts too around the globe to strengthen the importance and the knowledge and skills to integrate gender aspects into the sustainable chemical management practices. I feel as well, as Tessa also said, that this project can potentially transform the whole approach to how we look at the challenges globally around reducing the harmful impacts of chemicals on environment and human health. And therefore, I wish the G&CP great training sessions, and I hope to see you all in the sessions in autumn this year. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariella, for sharing your experiences and your perspectives and really saying in the beginning, all sectors need to engage and to, as the GFC says, to transform. And we hope that this small project will contribute a little bit to the focal points, capacities, and networking. So thanks also for joining as a focal point, Mariella. Thanks to all the three speakers for their perspectives, their introductions, and sharing their knowledge and their challenges maybe that we should also include when we further develop the training. Let's turn to that. I would like to introduce Anna Holthaus, project lead, and Michelle Kolmitz, project coordinator. They're both at MSP Institute and working on the know-how project. I believe Michelle will start and give us an overview of the project. And after those two presentations, we have time for questions of clarification. I guess over to you, Michelle, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Minu, for the introduction. Yeah, I'll take over now just for a brief introduction to our project with the title Know-how for European Chemicals Focal Points. And let me start by giving you a brief overview. The project is funded by the European Environmental Initiative under the German Federal Environment Ministry, and it is running from February this year until April 2027 with a total budget of almost 280,000 euros. On the next slide, you can see that our project's goal is to improve the integration of the needs and expertise of all relevant stakeholders into chemicals management in Europe and to promote their equal cooperation with each other. And to this aim, the main activity consists in delivering trainings on multi-stakeholder processes and gender mainstreaming. More specifically, this means that the MSP Institute will organize online webinars and a final in-person workshop. We will also provide networking and exchange opportunities for European chemicals focal points, and we will provide support for pilot implementation at the national level. As you can see, our project is not just about delivering information, it's also about building a network that strengthens the role of the focal points in shaping a more effective and inclusive and also gender-responsive chemicals management across Europe. Next slide, please. The broader impact that we aim to achieve is to reduce the harmful effects of chemicals on environment, nature, and human health by promoting effective, sustainable, and gender-responsive chemicals management. And we intend to realize this objective through capacity-building measures. These include targeted trainings and structured networking for our target group, the European chemicals focal points that are engaged in the Global Framework on Chemicals, and the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution Prevention. By the end of the project, we aim to see 3 concrete outcomes, and these are firstly increased knowledge and expertise on multi-stakeholder engagement and the interlinkages between gender and chemicals. Secondly, enhanced exchange and cooperation between focal points of international chemicals processes. And thirdly, improved national implementation capacity to turn international commitments into policies that are human rights-based, gender-responsive, and inclusive of all relevant stakeholders. Now let me quickly walk you through the main project activities. We have already concluded activity 1, the research of existing training materials and development of a training concept. And this phase also included conducting a needs assessment of focal points that you will hear a little bit more about later. And currently we are carrying out activity 2 that will run until October. And consists in developing training contents and training methodology. And next to that, we are, of course, promoting the project among potential partners. And then between October 2025, partners, I meant participants, and then between October 2025 and March 2026, as one of the core activities, so to say, we'll deliver 6 online trainings and facilitate an exchange space for focal points. And you will also learn a little bit more about the online trainings from Anna later on. Next year, in April 2026, we will start activity 4, which is all about pilot implementation at the national level. And this step will include support for national implementation activities through coaching sessions and also free online meetings for a core group of interested focal points. And then in the beginning of 2027, between January and March, we'll hold a final workshop, this time in person, that will offer space for reflection, learning, exchange, and networking. And finally, by April 2027, we will evaluate the results and publish the learnings from the project. And like this, we hope that we can ensure that it can be of continued use beyond the limited duration of the project and also beyond the initial target group. And with this, I conclude and pass back over to Minu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle, for this brief overview of the project. We'll learn a little more about some of the details from Anna, the project lead, who will talk a little bit about the needs assessment that was conducted and about the planned trainings. Over to you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bino, and I hope that my connection is stable. So I will now briefly present you the results of our needs assessment, and after that also our concept for the virtual training series. The first phase of the project involved conducting a needs assessment to better understand the actual training needs of the European chemicals focal points. And for this, we have conducted 7 in-depth interviews, 4 interviews with European chemicals focal points, and 3 interviews with further gender experts. We used semi-structured interviews, allowing us to identify both individual perspectives and also shared challenges. These insights then form the foundation for our training concept. The primary objective of the interviews was to gain an initial understanding of the needs and challenges faced by European chemical focal points, and a comprehensive or representative analysis was not intended. Accordingly, only a small number of interviews were conducted, which means that the findings cannot be generalized. Rather, they serve as a qualitative starting point for further reflection and discussions with you, the focal points. Across our interviews, several key challenges were identified which affect the European Chemicals Focal Points' ability to fulfill their role effectively. First is the need for role clarity and institutional structure. Several focal points reported insufficient guidance on their responsibilities and mandates, and institutional fragmentation was a recurring concern, with different ministries or agencies covering overlapping or disconnected mandates. Second, limited exchange and outreach. The exchange between focal points is mostly, or seems to be mostly, happening ad hoc, typically limited to briefings during international meetings or events. There's a lack of systematic networking and coordination mechanisms at both the European and global levels, according to the interviewees. The focal points also reported difficulties with involving new stakeholders in sectors, especially or among others, due to the limited awareness on the relevance of chemicals management beyond the environment sector. And third, and we've already heard that, is time and capacity constraints. The complexity and the breadth of the focal points tasks exceed often their current capacity levels. Many focal points operate without institutionalized support or dedicated team, and this is making it difficult to manage extensive stakeholder engagement. And NGO focal points in particular struggle with limited financial resources because there's no clear funding mechanism established. With the interviews, we could also identify the following training needs in regard to multi-stakeholder processes and gender mainstreaming. On the stakeholder side, there's a need for skills in outreach, in managing power dynamics and facilitation. And on the gender mainstreaming side, focal points requested a basic introduction to terminology and concept, as well as practical guidance and best practices for gender mainstreaming. The focal points also expressed interest in self-reflection on their role and empowering women in focal point roles. The interviews also showed the strong need for exchange and mutual learning among focal points. There's a desire for stronger national and international exchange and lasting communication channels. The focal points showed interest in topic-specific dialogue and peer learning in regard to that. And they mentioned the wish to increase mutual awareness of ongoing national and regional activities and to identify shared objectives. In addition, the focal points showed interest in other focal points backgrounds, in their institutional settings and working methods, and expressed the aim to foster transnational cooperation with neighborhood countries or countries with similar institutional landscapes. In terms of format and methods, the interviewees suggested the following. They want input from practitioners, not just theorists, a focus on concrete cross-country challenges, interactive and thematic exchange forums. They also suggested the creation or use of direct tools for peer exchange among focal points, like mailing lists, shared resource, or structured networking platforms. They also suggested to use reflection questions between sessions or small homeworks. And importantly, they prefer a flexible design of the trainings, which allows us to develop the training focus topics jointly over time to address their challenges and needs. So based on these findings and suggestions, we've then developed the concept for our virtual training series, and I will briefly present that now. So as you can see here again, the target group are the national focal points of the Global Framework on Chemicals and the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution from countries in Europe. In addition, the target group are the NGO and IGO focal points of organizations with a work focus in Europe. The trainings will be delivered through 6 virtual trainings, 1 per month. Each will be 90 minutes long, and the sessions will most likely be split into 3 parts. 1/3 will be on multi-stakeholder processes, 1/3 on gender and chemicals, and 1/3 will especially be for an informal exchange between the European chemical focal points. And to make the training sessions engaging and useful, we want to invite guest speakers, including, of course, our experts from the Gender and Chemicals Partnership. And we want to use interactive tools and methods. There will be 1 registration required for all trainings, and there will also be the possibility to get a certificate at the end of the training series. More on that later by Michelle again. And yeah, here you can see the 6 training sessions we will be covering and the dates that have already been scheduled. Session 1 will be on understanding gender, stakeholders, and multi-stakeholder processes. In October, we will begin with an introduction to the key concepts, definitions, and examples. This session will set the foundation for understanding gender perspectives in chemicals management and the role of different actors in multi-stakeholder processes. The second session is titled Engaging Stakeholders in Chemicals Policy. This session will focus on identifying and approaching different stakeholders, as well as strategies for effective stakeholder outreach. We will discuss how to integrate diverse expertise into chemicals management, including women's knowledge and gender expertise. Session 3 is on facilitating high quality and gender responsive stakeholder engagement. Here, the focus will shift to communication and facilitation. We will explore principles and practical strategies for high quality engagement, ensuring gender balance in meetings, addressing power imbalances, and managing potential conflicts. Session 4 will focus on data and knowledge for chemicals management. We will examine the different types of knowledge in multi-stakeholder processes, the role of social sciences, and the importance of collecting sex and gender disaggregated data. This session will also include an exchange on existing data and knowledge gaps, as well as on strategies for overcoming them. Session 5 is titled Empowering Chemical Focal Points. In this session, we will look at the role of national focal points or focal points in general, their specific tasks and challenges, and ways to strengthen their capacities. We will discuss possible gender-related issues linked to this role and explore strategies to empower women in these positions. And session 6 will be on strategies for national implementation. Our final session will focus on putting plans into action. We will discuss national implementation strategies, including the Gender and Chemicals Framework, Gender Action Plan, and methods such as the Gender Impact Assessment. And this, of course, will also be an opportunity to exchange experiences and learn from national implementation activities from your countries. The trainings will take place always on the 2nd Wednesday of each month. And yeah, thank you very much. And with this, back to you, Mino.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for this overview. And here's the invitation to register, and in the chat, the link to it. I'd like to invite you to spread the word. If you know of colleagues who might or might not have heard of this, we have emailed all European focal points, but you know how it is. You are getting zillions of emails. So if you want other colleagues to join, maybe you also have an alternate focal point or several people from one country or one organization are welcome. It's not a problem. We have space for, I think, up to about 40 participants. So it's absolutely fine. And we'll do some of the interactive work in small parallel groups so that you can benefit from interaction. So please spread the word. send people a note, just forward the registration link or in whatever shape or form you can. It would be great to have focal points from different parts of Europe, but also from different stakeholders. Like we had some NGO and we had Mariella here and IGO focal points. It would be great. With that, I would like to thank all speakers who have joined us today and shared their perspectives, the team for sharing the information about the project, for preparing the mural, you all for your questions and leaving your comments on the mural board. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you at the training sessions and work with you. Thank you very much for being here today.